So I have a problem. This is the problem. I have almost no table space in my apartment, and my roommate and I like to host events here, so when we do, table space gets pretty bad pretty quick. We hosted a Halloween party pretty recently with a pumpkin carving competition, and things got messy. Safe to say, we need more table space, but I don't really want to put a full-size dining table in here. I think it would overcrowd things. So here's what I came up with. I need a dining table that also isn't a dining table. Sometimes. I would also love more storage, so I'm going to try and modify an IKEA console by adding this countertop which can swing out and unfold into a huge table. I'm also going to try and elevate the IKEA piece with a little secret sauce. But why is a woodworker even using IKEA furniture? I'm too busy to build it. This project started with me cutting down some plywood. Actually, that's not right. Let's go back. This project really started almost 2 years ago, before I moved into my current apartment, when I saw an Instagram post for a folding table and thought, something like that might be perfect for my space, and started sketching up some initial concepts. But it wasn't until almost 6 months later when I started building. I just got busy with other projects for school and for YouTube. But a few weeks into the build, and I started to notice something really bad happening. The solid wood boards were warping, and after that, I didn't have time to expend restarting this and got busy with another project. So really, the plan was to make this table over a year ago, but with life being so busy, I've only been able to get around to it now. But now here I am, finally able to build it. Now to plywood. But why plywood? Well, my problem before was the boards warping, and with the table design that relies on parts moving and fitting together flush, well, that's a pretty major issue. Plywood is much more stable than solid wood, meaning its tendency to bend and flex with changes in humidity and temperature are far less, so I'm really hoping that this will mean everything stays flat. So far I've been cutting the two top halves of the table, as well as the two legs, we'll call them legs, all to the same width, and then cross-cutting them all to length. I'm actually cutting them smaller than I want them to be in the end, and that's because this plywood edge, well, it sucks. And I'm going to cover it up using wood from my old warped tabletop. I took off a section of it and started ripping it down into pretty thin strips, but still much thicker than iron-on edge banding, if you've ever seen that. Because not only is this for looks, but also to provide a solid edge to the table so the plywood can't chip out. To fit them onto the plywood, I'm mitering the corners on, well, the miter saw, using the plywood as a real-world measurement instead of a tape measure, and test fitting all the corresponding pieces, taking slivers of material off and retesting until I get that perfect fit. It's a tedious process, but a necessary one in order to ensure no gaps anywhere. I glued on all the edge banding off camera, but you might have noticed in these last clips that the edge banding is ever so slightly thicker than the plywood, and this is on purpose. I now flush it up with this palm router, but the edge I have to balance on is really thin, and if I slip up, I would ruin all of my work so far. I managed to cut one edge, but I felt like it wasn't confident and couldn't control it. So I went in the back and found this larger base plate for the router, put it on, and it made a world of difference. Now for a quick tip. By taking a paper towel and running it along the edge of my board, I can feel which way the wood fibers are running, and choose to run my router in the direction of the grain so there's a far less chance of the wood splintering and chipping out as I flush trim it. I wouldn't recommend this cut for every router cut because it means half the time you'll be doing climb cuts, but for small edge banding, it's very easy to stay in control. And if you don't know what a climb cut is, don't you worry, I will get to that. To hold up the smaller pieces for flush trim routing, it's super easy using my patented knee clamp technology, and once everything is secured, the workpiece is held very securely at the perfect height for routing. The larger panels are also easy to hold, just clamping your board with screw clamps clamped with quick clamps. Super simple, but for the other edges, you gotta get creative. Now, the next thing to do after flushing up all the edge banding would be to add the hinges that make everything work. But The ones I'm using are special. They're not like normal door hinges, and they need a very specific mortise cut out in order to fit into. I spent so long making different iterations of 3D printed jigs, and every time they were just a little off. I have so much footage of all my tests, trials, and errors, yet yeah, I'm not showing all that. Testing? Boring. So I did end up using 3D printed jigs, but what I did was instead of trying to print new ones over and over and over to get the perfect size, I added layers of blue tape until I had built up to the size I wanted. This way was way faster to test, and I could add and remove tape to dial in a fit. To use this jig, it's pretty similar to a domino or doweling jig. I mark lines across the two boards I want to join, so they're in exactly the same place on both boards, and then I can line up the jig using this cutout I modeled into it, and securely clamp it on. I then can insert a plunge router with a guide bushing into the jig, and the guide bushing will, well, guide it exactly where it's meant to cut. Here you can see that cut, perfectly following the guide built into the template. The templates make it pretty easy and fast to repeat this for every hinge I need. Now, we aren't done quite yet. There's actually another jig. This one, instead of having to align by eye, falls into place using the cutout that I just made. These hinges I'm using have a sort of T-shape which I have to cut in, so I just cut the top of the T, and now I have to cut the deeper, narrower mortise to complete that shape. But while it was super easy to make all the cuts with the jigs, what matters more was that they were correct, and with all of my jig testing going wrong, it's safe to say I was not confident. I just finished routing everything on the first two pieces, and now it's time for the moment of truth. Alright, so far things are looking pretty good. Finally bought myself a center finding drill bit, which has been really helpful. Now, will it open? And okay, that opened perfectly. Dang, let's go. Woo! Alright, so that's giving me the green light to go ahead and do the rest of them on all the other pieces. Things were starting to go my way, and my extensive planning was finally paying off. But planning out manufacturing is only half the process. Planning out the creative design is just as important. I've recently started organizing my creative projects in Milanote, a tool designed for creatives to help them take control of their creative process. For this project, I started by creating a mood board using one of their many built-in templates. Mood boards are great for really getting at the feel of a project. Here's the mood board I made for this build, and I love how easy it is for me to edit them as my vision for the project changes and develops. Having everything in one place is also super useful. I'm pretty forgetful myself, so I made myself a materials list right on the board as I was thinking about the design and how I would build it. Writing out to-do lists is a way I like to get clutter out of my head and make sure that I stay organized and can't forget any steps. Once I got my mood board in a place I liked, I created subboards where I started compiling all my sketches and working through my design, making notes of things I like and what to work on. And once I got further into designing the details, I created a column where I compiled all my leg designs, making it way easier to compare them and choose my favorite. While I'm designing, oftentimes my mind is running with ideas and how to actually fabricate them, and so I'll add my notes onto the board so I won't forget them, and can always reference back to them during the build as I need to. And when ideas suddenly come to me, and I need to work them out in full, I can use the sketch tool to draw out my ideas right on the board. As I work through a project plan, Milanote's flexible workspace works with me. I could rapidly ideate on the layout of my design details with Milanote's built-in Draw on Top feature. Since Milanote syncs up through all of my devices, it's super easy to import an image from my computer and work on it from any of my other devices. I love having Milanote in my tool belt to plan out and keep on track during projects, and I think you would too. Milanote not only has over 100 built-in templates for any of your creative needs, but it can also adapt to your specific needs. So whether you're a maker like me, graphic designer, filmmaker, or any type of creative, Milanote can help you organize your work. Milanote is completely free with no time limit, so sign up using the link in the description and start taking control of your creative process. And thank you to Milanote for sponsoring this video. The flush trim bit didn't actually get as close as I expected. There's just a hair of material left that I'm going to try to clean up with a chisel first and then get to sanding. I think if I start sanding before doing this, I might burn through the veneer before I actually make them flush, so it's going to be a while, but I think it'll be worth it just to be safe. Now, as you just saw, hand tool work is not my strong suit. When I started woodworking 10 years ago now, I immediately asked my parents for power tools, and I'm kind of surprised they gave them to me. But if you're watching, thanks mom and dad. Anyways, I've been avoiding hand tools since I was a kid, but after a little practice here, I actually started to get some pretty good shavings, and it didn't take nearly as long as I thought, and was really satisfying. Maybe, just maybe, those hand tool woodworkers are onto something. At this point, everything is flushed up, cleaned up, and working, but I actually have to disassemble the folding panels because I need to glue up one top panel and one bottom panel into an L shape. The way I'm going to do this is with some dominoes. Now, I'm not really sure if dominoes were the best joinery method here, but they are extremely fast, and I needed that because things were taking a lot longer than expected. Not only that, but my college classes were also picking up. I was getting a little stressed remembering back to the last 2 times I'd postponed this project, knowing that I can't really afford to push it back any further, but also that I might not have a choice. And I think that stress might have been getting to me during the glue up, as I was frantically trying to clean up the squeeze out with my water bottle water, and for some reason, one of the corners wasn't aligned, so I was having to balance a squeeze clamp onto a longer pipe clamp and try to pull everything together forcefully, all the while ensuring it was square. Thankfully. Yeah, that looks good. Woo! The last thing the tops need is a bearing to give it that smooth swiveling action, and I'm going to be doing this with a few more 3D printed templates, in conjunction with my templating bit in the plunge router. To start, I set the depth of the router to just a little bit more than the bearing, because I want it to be inset. In order to get the perfect spot, the template hooks onto the corner. I can then route in a hole the perfect size of the bearing, but that's not it. I then use another template which fits into the hole, offsetting it, allowing me to carve in just a little bit deeper, giving the outside of the bearing somewhere to rest on, and room for the inner ring to pivot without rubbing on anything. Now, even though I'm not making the cabinet, I do still want to design the overall aesthetic of this piece, so part of the way I'm going to do that is with a base. This base is being made with more material from my failure version. I'm ripping out some usable strips from it, making sure any of the embedded dominoes won't be seen in the finished piece. And you can see here how warped this piece got over the past few months. If that was my table, it would have been bad. But now it's still being put to good use, as I cut down one of the strips into little chunks that I need for feet, using a stop block so they'll all end up the same. Alright, so I think I need like 8 feet. Hold on. Wait, that's too many feet. Too many feet! So after cutting all those blocks, I just realized that some of them have to be bigger. So, I'm gonna fix that. Jeez, what an idiot. Obviously, since some of the legs are different sizes, some are gonna need to be bigger. But that's fine, he got there in the end. Now, to attach all those little feet to the base assembly stretchers, I will once again be employing dominoes. This time, I'm confident that this was a good choice. It's super easy and efficient, adds strength, and makes alignment foolproof, and should make the glue up go super smoothly. All of that was, well, in theory. Huh? What? For some reason, some of the dominoes were simply not going in, no matter how hard I hammered them. So I started panicking, just a little bit, and decided to first finish clamping up the other one. Then take the entire assembly over to the belt sander and just sand them shorter, and that worked fine. It was so weird since the first ones were totally fine, but I figured that maybe when I was cutting the domino mortises, I rushed and didn't cut to full depth? Well, whatever it was, at least I got through it, or at least that's what I thought. I ended up just sanding those down too, and everything ended up alright in the end, except my camera died. But that means we don't have to watch me struggle anymore, and instead we can move on to shaping the legs to look a little more interesting than this. But speaking of wanting to be more and do more, I think that's been a major theme of my life recently, but I found it especially true when thinking about this build. I've been taking on a lot recently and underestimating what it takes to get there. Each individual one of my undertakings, I maybe underestimate the amount of work by 25%. But when I'm doing 3, 4, 5 projects at once, juggling multiple university classes, professional obligations, and personal projects, those 25% can add up to a lot. Take this project for example. When I started, I thought that because I'm using an IKEA cabinet for a large portion of the build, that it would be easy. I just need to cut a few panels, glue on some edge banding, screw in some hinges, and voila. And while yes, not having to make the cabinet did save me a lot of time, I'm always deceived by the simplicity of my ideas. I forget the multiple passes on each leg it takes to template route them, the hours of sanding, and all the little fixes that really add up. Speaking of which, I think I might be coming up on one right now. Got a tear out. Thankfully I stopped in time and the piece didn't fly off, so shoving some glue in there should fix it. But in order to not have that happen again, I'm going to change up my strategy and do some climb cutting. See? I told you I'd get back to it. In general, you want to route against the spin of the tool. That gives you control over the wood. In a climb cut, you push your wood in the same direction the blade spins, meaning it could grab and shoot off. As you can see here, I'm pushing in the opposite direction of the very helpful arrows on the table, but when in control and done safely, climb cuts can be very helpful for negating tear out. Now to join the short sides of the legs to the long ones, I'm going to try and get a clean miter joint. But the miter saw couldn't quite reach all the way down, so I once again got to pretend to be a pristine and proper hand tool woodworker, if only just for a little longer. I also added a slight chamfer to the edges with a palm router, just because it would be much easier to do that now before everything was assembled. I then mark out matching lines on all the parts, so that I can once again use the domino for that easy foolproof glue up. Since this joint is going to be pretty tight, I double check the depth to make sure I won't cut through. Not sure if you caught it, but something bad just happened and I don't notice yet. Alright, so I was just cutting the dominoes on these leg joints and it felt a little funny using the tool, like I wasn't holding it down tight enough, and so it was shifting and moving on me. And I was like, well, that's weird, because I am holding it down tightly. And then I saw the tool move, and I realized I didn't lock down the height adjustment. Maybe you'll be able to see in the footage where that happens. I didn't notice it until it was too late. And so, sure enough, when I checked, the domino was cutting way too low because it had slipped. And I was like, oh, okay, it's fine. At least on this side, I didn't cut too deep. And I realized, oh shit, I already did 2 of them. And sure enough, when I checked the back, the first 2 I did, it went through the front side. I am cutting it really close on time right now. I don't have enough time to make another one, and this piece was going to be the front because it does look nicer than the other one, but now it's going to be the back. So it is what it is. What can you do? Well, I didn't expect to be talking to the camera so soon again, but the next thing that I would have to do is cut these to their final height, but I can't actually do that yet because I need something I ordered off Amazon, these little felt feet, and I ordered them once, delayed. I ordered them the second time, somehow also delayed. I think I'm just gonna have to order something new, but point is, I don't have them yet, so I can't cut them to their height. I need them to know that measurement. So instead, I'm going to pivot. This is one of the doors on the IKEA cabinet that I bought. I think that it looks quite boring and I'm gonna try to spice it up. And so I was thinking back to a long time ago when I was watching a Padula Studio video and he did a metal inlay into wood. And he said that he thinks you could even spice up an IKEA cabinet with this technique. So I'm gonna put that to the test. I bought 4 doors, but I only need 3 because one of them I'm going to use as a test to see if I can even do this technique at all, or if the particle board is going to chip out and be horrible. So I'm going to start testing that. The metal I bought is 3/8 inch stock, and the only 3/8 inch router bits that I could find at the shop were these pretty dinged up ones, so I wasn't super hopeful, but decided to give it a go anyways. Well, the first routing test actually seems pretty good. The veneer does come up a little bit, but I think that'll just come out with some sanding. Ends are also pretty clean. With that much better than expected result, I needed to do some further testing because I don't have a car with me at school, so it would be a huge problem if I'd have to go get more doors from IKEA. I tested a couple cuts intersecting to see whether or not it would tear out, but besides this one very sharp corner, it was surprisingly good. The last test was to make sure the metal could actually fit in. Wow. That is pretty good. And with that confidence boost, I could start working on the real doors. I started by laying them out, and I forgot to show it here, but there's an 1/8 inch spacer between the doors for the reveal. Now, to lay out all these lines, I employed the power of CAD design. By simply going into my 3D model and clicking on 2 points, I knew the distance the pieces need to be from the corner, so I could measure that out and stick on a piece of tape that's the width of my inlay. And after repeating the same process for the other side, it was basically just connect the dots. Now, this isn't perfect, but it doesn't need to be, since this is all for the flair and style. As long as it looks good, it is right. I'm gonna route in the channels using a straight edge, and I might be using the most expensive straight edge in the entire shop for this, the Festool Track Saw Trash. But in my defense, nobody ever uses this tool anyways. I don't know why, because it's so versatile, safe, easy to set up, and it's the perfect tool for when your back's up against the wall and you have no other options. But before I can add the metal into these grooves, I wanted to sand them to give them a brushed finish, and it was going to be a lot of sanding, so I hopped on my modeling software, whipped up a sanding block for my favorite sandpaper discs, and remotely sent it to my new printer, the Bambu Lab X1 Carbon, and by the time I got home, it was done. I've talked about 3D printers for woodworkers before in my videos, but this is the first time I can actually recommend one. Bambu Lab has streamlined the process to be super beginner friendly, and their printers are packed full of features, like it'll automatically detect if your print failed, stop it, and let you go. And it prints like 3 times faster than my old one. That's just crazy to me. To be fully transparent, Bambu Lab did send me the X1 Carbon. However, I was about to purchase one myself, and many of my friends already own theirs, and are super happy with it. Actually, the College of Design that I study at just ordered a ton of them for their students to use, just because of how reliable and how user-friendly they are. I've been holding off on recommending a printer in my videos until I found one I truly believed was reliable and user-friendly, and this is finally it. Woo! It's done! Damn, that looks good. I ordered a new roll of felt which finally came in, meaning I could measure its thickness, the height of the cabinet, and the height of my table legs, and with the help of my professional diagram, finally figure out where to cut my base legs. But before I could glue up and assemble the legs, I cut some plywood stretchers to add for extra stability, and these would simply be pocket holed into place during the glue up, underneath where you'd never see them. Speaking of the glue up, this time, I would not run out of clamps. This time, I would be ready. Things started off not too bad. Not great either, I mean, it's crunch time no matter what during a glue up, but things started to get worse. As it turns out, there is actually such thing as too many clamps. I know. I didn't think it was possible either, but clamps were getting in the way of other ones and I couldn't get pressure where I needed it. And in the end, all I needed were 4 squeeze clamps and a screw in the stretchers. After that, it was mostly cleanup and minor details. I added a little chamfer to the top edge of the leg assembly and got everything ready for finish. Now, why am I using IKEA furniture in this build? It seems like a sin for a woodworker to want to have IKEA furniture, let alone incorporate it into their build. Especially since in the first video of mine that did really well, the main plot was why I would rather build my own furniture than buy IKEA. Life is all about trade-offs, and what I usually trade for buying IKEA furniture is the ability to creatively express myself, work through exciting challenges, and design beautiful things. But on the other hand, I sacrifice my time, and time is the most valuable currency there is. The thing is, building a black rectangular box isn't any of those things. It isn't creatively stimulating at all, and at a time where I'm already trying to pursue so many things, the trade-off for IKEA furniture doesn't really seem to have a downside. Now, I've basically built everything, and I just have to get it back to my apartment. Now let me introduce you to the driver. I pay him in chicken nuggets.
I'm doing free labor for him.
No. This is consensual paid labor.
I'm held against my will.
No, say what you said earlier.
That's what I said earlier, bro.
No, look at this,
This is
proof.
Proof of what? This is a box.
You got me. Back at the shop, it was an unideal situation. The first years just had an assignment where they had to sand foam, so foam dust was covering everything.
My car is gonna be dirty forever.
Also, they cut the power to the building that day, so there's no lights. Come here!
I can't see.
This is YouTuber shot right here.
It's just me though. It should be you. I'm not the YouTuber. Why is your phone so broken, dude?
Don't tell them that.
Dude, the entire back glass is. You can't see this, chat.
Chat.
Chat, the entire back glass is broken.
I feel no sympathy for this man and his dusty car. Back at home, I finally finished assembling the IKEA furniture that have been sitting in our living room for almost 2 years now, and stuck on some adhesive back felt feet to the bottom of the legs. As I flipped it over, I found these leveling feet with threaded inserts, which, if I'd remembered were there, I totally would have used, but I forgot, so instead I used some figure 8 fasteners. I then started putting on the doors and the hinges, and once they were all on, I noticed something bad. The doors weren't aligned. Then I noticed something worse. The carcass had an insane racking issue. Just the slightest push, and everything would shift out of alignment. To fix this, I should be able to stick a wooden panel on the back of the boxes, and that should eliminate most of the racking. All I need is a board that's 22 1/8 inches long. Damn. So all I need to do is domino 2 smaller pieces into a larger panel, glue them up, and cut them to fit.
Please just fit it. God damn it.
So all I need to do is take it all the way back to the shop, cut a 16th off, and bring it all the way back. Come on. Oh, yes. That is perfect. But does it actually fix the racking? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm pushing and this thing is not budging. Now it was finally gonna be smooth sailing. All I had left was to screw the hinges into the back and stick on some felt so that things could slide freely. But just as we put everything together, I noticed something terribly wrong. Okay, this is bad. Somehow, somewhere along the line, I messed up some math and the legs were way too long. I mean, not even close, which means that the top was being tilted at a huge angle. This may not seem that bad, but over the long term, this is going to cause the table to warp and bend and tear itself to pieces.
Yeah, I think you left the...
Put like a thick material underneath, like.
Yeah.
I mean, I could put leveling feet, but it would look so bad.
You can put wood feet and then felt on the bottom.
I also have to ideally find a solution that I can do before I fly out. So what time is it? I have 2 hours? I have 2 hours? Just to be clear, that's not 2 hours to fix this. That's 2 hours to fix a table, film the final B-roll, film everything else I need for the video, and pack up and go to the airport. So I sped to the shop, stole the track saw, and skateboarded it back to my apartment.
I don't have time for good cinematography.
Back at my apartment, my roommate helped me flip the table up so we could cut it with the track saw. We hooked up our dust collection, and I prayed that I measured right.
I'm scared.
What if we cut into our floor?
Just go down how far?
I think if it cuts on the floor, we say it's always been like
Alright.
And there's no video evidence of it.
There's no video evidence anywhere.
I'll stick like 2 little pieces on it for now, and then we test and pray it works. Okay. And
I think it's perfect.
it's
I
perfect?
think it's perfect.
No way. That's good enough for
What do you
me.
mean good enough? I don't see any problem.
Let's go! Let's go!
I also need to affix this 3D printed bearing guide onto the top of the cabinet, and to do that, I'm going to use some double-sided tape.
I mean, this is professional woodworking. Why would they make fun of me?
Well, they also avoid it because it's stupid, but yeah.
What? No. This is ingenious. If it works, it's not stupid.
You show, wow, it's not coming up.
Wow, it's not coming up.
Then to put in the final hinges, and it's time to see whether everything works.
All right. The actual moment of truth now. Okay.
Table!
Table!
You got a video. You went chair! And this time,
Table! This is my thing.
This project was actually a huge learning lesson for me, because of how simple I thought the design was, and how much more there was to the execution. Maybe it's just growing up, or maybe our lives are getting so fast-paced, but there's just so much to do all the time. And I feel like I have to push things I care about to the side more and more. I want to pursue so many things, make everything I do perfectly how I envision it, but that's simply not realistic. I don't have the time to make it all perfect, and I'm coming to terms with that. You know, sometimes it's okay to have a little exposed plywood on the bottom of a build. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.